Hi, this is Tracie Daily, and I've been saying for a long time that I was going to do this, and it's now time that I do. So, I'm not going to do it exact. It's not going to be like the Audible one straight off. I'll have to mess around with a little bit of editing, but we are going to do Tracie's story, and beforehand I'm going to explain why. Not just because I want to share my story, that's a given, but because of a girl I watched on Britain's Got Talent called Serene. I believe her surname is Zahanglaha. However, I could be pronouncing that totally incorrectly. If you go to Instagram and type in Serene, S-I-R-I-N-E .music, S-I-R-I-N-E .music, you'll find her straight off. She's got the little blue tick by her name. She's on something like 12,000 followers. And she deserves every credit. She's absolutely amazing. I've never met her. I don't know the first thing about her other than I was watching Britain's Got Talent with my wife one night, and she came on as a pianist, singer, and she's absolutely incredible. She also happens to be completely blind. I think she was 11 at the time, but don't quote me, I could be wrong. My daughters are 8 and 4, and I remember the father telling the story of Serene and how she was playing with a tablet, and they knew she was going blind. They knew that there was a good chance she would never see again. And as she was playing with this tablet, she just stopped and turned to her dad and said, "I can't play this anymore, Dad." And he knew then that she'd gone blind. I cannot imagine the difficulty for the parents, the family, and Serene. And as much as I've seen a few things, I've known people that have been through a lot of things, quadriplegia, paraplegia, some mental conditions, paranoid schizophrenia, drink dependency, and so on. As a parent, just watching that little clip alone and how the father explained it, things change when you become a parent. They change a lot in how you view things and how you act. And that broke me, that did. I turned to my wife then and said, "Tracy's story's gone on Audible." She said, "Are you going to get to narrate it?" I said, "I don't know." And I've been looking around for like a year and a half now, and everyone that comes along is unsuitable for one reason or another. And there's been a lot of back and forward on whether I could make money on this, whether I should, and how I should go about it. And in the end, I went, you know what, I'm just going to do it myself. It's never been about the money. That's why everything's on at the lowest I can put it on online. It's always been about getting that story out there and reaching people that otherwise wouldn't be able to read. So Serene, that's SIRINE .music on Instagram. Go and have a listen. She is absolutely incredible. And, thank you, because you've inspired me to get up there and to do this. So, from the beginning, it's a very difficult story. I've done everything in it's real, 100%, apart from the names. I've changed the names for, reasons, and you'll see why. My father kills my mother in this story. A lot of things happen in this story which shouldn't have happened. And it's all true. And it's going to be very difficult. I needed a bit of experience. And so I created a podcast. And I did a few cases of other people. So I tried to do it in the most positive and victim positive way, survivor story way that I could, without dramatising the crime and the killers that go into it. It's called Killers and Crime and it's on Spreaker. But you type in Tracie Daily Books and you'll find all my details out there. So let's go ahead. The hardest book I've ever read out. I'm going to start off straight from the beginning and go through the acknowledgements. To my wife Ellen, without you, none of this would have been possible. You've given me the time and inspiration to write time and time again, supported my every decision, and more importantly made me believe that not only can I do this for everyone else, I can also do it for me. An endless supply of coffee and encouragement always helped. Thank you. Wendy B. It's no secret I'd not be here if it wasn't for you. You put everything into perspective for me, and I'll be forever grateful. Thank you for being the light. Nigel M., my therapist and my friend. I love and miss you dearly. You are an inspiration. Malona. When I got overconfident, you knocked me back into place. When I didn't have the strength to stand, you dragged me back up, whether I wanted you to or not. Thank you. Much love. David L. I may still be stuck in a very bad situation if it wasn't for your contribution, David. Of course, a suede pair of shoes or a cigarette always helps. Thank you. Shirley, you trusted me where I didn't even trust myself. I'm forever grateful. George and Shirley C., the only couple I'd ever have let take the place of my parents. Thank you. Mark S., the only social worker I ever trusted. Julie M., you're a tribute to your faith. Thank you. Not only did you teach me maths, you taught me self-respect. Rose D., one session, one meeting, one of the most inspirational people I have ever met. I am honoured to know you. You changed my life completely. Miss Whalen. Writing those 28 pages that day made me realise I could create anything, and so I created this. Thank you for your guidance. Mum. Until we meet again. And I credit to Sam, www.samm.org.uk. That's www.samm.org.uk. And because they are absolutely amazing. Okay, let's get straight into chapter 1, Tracie's story. My mother was stood next to an old table drinking a glass of water and looking out over the pond in the back garden. I can remember the water was more green than clear from previous trips out there among the trees. I must have been no older than 6. I knew nobody was out there. She looked relaxed, her thin, tall frame silhouetted against the cool autumn morning, showing through from the glass doorway. My earliest memory. Brown hair flowed down her opal-shaped face, bouncing the sun's rays into an arch through the kitchen, and warming the dark wooden table, which was brown, like her eyes. Wenzel was my father's name. He brought me a tractor toy. It was red and had buttons on the back which were black. There was 4 which made the vehicle go forwards, backwards, and lifted up and down the dipper. He'd also bought a robot that turned into a monster. I was terrified of it. He loved to chase me with it, I recall it vividly. He placed me on the sofa and the robot beneath the cushions, and then soothed me by talking softly and leaning forward. He would stroke my neck until I was calm. Then he'd slide his hand down the sofa and press all the buttons to make the monster appear from within the robot. I'd freak out again and again. He loved this game so much that it got to the point if he placed his hand out of sight, I was scared what might actually appear. He lived to taunt people. He tried often to get my mother Bernie on side. She wasn't amused, but this simply gave him another avenue to exert his authority. Shut up, woman, am I playing? Have a little fun in your laugh, for God's sake. He'd snap at her, throwing her a filthy look, which would always linger several seconds longer than it should have. Although the appearance was of snapping, he was always in control. He was always in control. My sister and I were in the garden. It was summer. By now I must have been 7. I had a toy handgun Wenzel had brought back from the shop he was working in. A man walked past, by our front fence, and I shot him. Bang! He pretended to die. The day was hot and he'd made me laugh. I looked around behind me to see if Mum had seen through the window. I knew she'd be watching. I'd be in trouble for playing with strangers, and she'd be in trouble for letting me if Wenzel found out. Nobody saw, and so I shot him again, and he walked away. I wished he'd come back and play. Caroline was running round somewhere beside the house. She was 3 years younger than me. Wenzel was English, his mother was Austrian. He was the only one of his family to get an Austrian name. His brothers and sisters had English names. He was upstairs whilst my mum was downstairs with me one time, and we were sat in a rocking chair together beneath Mum and Wenzel's bedroom. My mother's hair was down around her shoulders, and I was leaning on it whilst my nan, Pat, my mum's mother, was stood by the window talking to Mum. I wasn't listening. I just remember the smell of cigarette smoke and her swishing hand movements as she spoke. Between the combination of Nan's voice, the hypnotic hand movements, and leaning into Mum's hair, I was becoming quite comfortable when we heard a huge bang from upstairs. Nan ran into the hall. "Wenzel, you all right?" she shouted in a half Mancunian, half Macclesfield accent. "No, blew my foot off," he replied. I could hear movement upstairs. Mum and I were at the bottom looking upwards. "What?" Pat asked, looking at Mum, half in nerves, half in shock. Nan went upstairs and we heard her shout down in disbelief. "He bloody has, you know. Call an ambulance." The story went he'd been cleaning his shotgun and forgot it was loaded. He accidentally blew off 3 toes. Of course, it was purely coincidental he'd done this exactly above where my mother and I were sat. Years later he changed the story, say he was attempting suicide, but that he couldn't go through with it. Wenzel appeared huge, despite only being 5'6". Maybe it was a trick of the light, as he blocked my view into the back garden and the sun. We weren't allowed to talk to the neighbours, who didn't work, because they buried cars in the garden, and believed that items had spirits. I was told they were sheiks. I'd never heard of them, but I believed my father. Why wouldn't I? They did have a car half buried in the drive. We needed a bigger place because Mum had me and Caroline and was now pregnant with my brother Jonathan. To add to the home, we also had an Alsatian called Lance. It wasn't long before Wenzel said Mum couldn't cope with 2 children. His attitude got worse, and he told the social services he couldn't cope with his wife's illness. Mum had depression, but I saw no signs of it back then. I remember clearly playing in the garden on a sheet Mum had put out for me and Jonathan. I was playing with the leaves that had fallen from the tree, counting the little red dots that were on its dark green surface. I was amazed at such a huge world on such a tiny leaf, the veins like roads that could take me anywhere, and the red dots like villages of people. It was beautiful. I can still smell the freshly laid tarmac from outside the home. Mum was stood out in the sunshine with me and Jonathan. My sister had been taken away to live with her aunt and uncle, Wesley and Lisa, Pat's sister and brother-in-law. The leaves were mine. I pretended I could see Caroline in them. It was strange without my sister. I don't remember her leaving, but I do remember her being gone. We'd moved at least 3 times already. I don't remember the actual moves, just recall the different properties and their related stories. I was so young. We moved once to have our own place as a family, and then again to move nearer to Nan and Pat. We then did another exchange to Moorhill Road in Macclesfield. All of our properties were in Macclesfield, and all of them were on the Moss Rose estate. Nan and Pat lived next door but one to Wenzel. I'd told the housing officer it would be easier on him if he had a carer for Mum. So now Nan was to be Mum's carer. Where Mum was quiet, shy, and never raised her voice, Nan was a complete opposite. She was strong, loud, and took no shit. She was known on the estate as the battle axe, because if you needed something taken care of, you spoke to Pat. Where Mum's eyes were calm and brown, Pat had a steely glaze which seemed to protect with the same ferocity as it warned. Where Wenzel was rude and belittling, my granddad Alan was kind, fun, and caring. Pat soon decided she wanted me permanently, and as she was Mum's carer, I was to move in with her to help Mum get better. I loved my grandparents. It wasn't long before I was calling Pat and Alan my mum and dad. I couldn't do this when Wenzel visited, because Nana said it would make him angry, but it was very rare he visited at all. Mum was diagnosed as agoraphobic. The furthest she'd travel was her garden, despite only living next door but one to us, so my grandparents became my immediate family. I have a lot of happy memories around Pat's house. Nan was looked up to on the estate, not always for good reasons. Her son Clive had been inside a lot, and if anything happened or a friend had a problem, it was usually Nan who provided the favour. It was always Clive who was sent around to have a chat or give someone a slap. It was a rough estate right next to the football ground with a pub at either end. Grandad Alan was a gardener, cash in hand on account of his epilepsy. Strong as an ox, short and balding but very well built. He was Irish and had a wonderful southern accent. He used to draw men doing martial arts for me, and then explain the moves. We would add swords or bats to the pictures, and we'd watch American wrestling videos together. We both loved Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. Every time the Bushwhackers came on, he would do their theme dance all around the house and body slam me into the sofa. It was harmless fun, and giggles filled the house. It was summer, and he was tiring from digging up a tree from in the back garden. We decided to go to the shops a short walk from the corner. He bought apple pie and Lucozade, and we walked home. He was sat in the wheelbarrow outside, the heat blistering down on his broad bare shoulders. I was sat on a green milk crate whilst we sucked out of bottles and ate pie. He lay back with a roll up on the go and fell asleep. When he woke up, Pat told him off for falling asleep in the sun. He laughed and grabbed a plastic crab which had adorned the shed and chased her around the garden with it making clicking noises. We all laughed. "Put it away, you stupid, stupid man," Nan chided, slapping him away gently.